YouTube. This is my Squier Bullet. Yeah, a wee talk on it, what it is and why. Yes, so in the 70s, companies such as Ibanez were branded, and lots of, you've seen them all the time, copies of Strats and Les Pauls and Tellys and all that. And at that time, Gibson and Fender weren't doing particularly good jobs. They were kind of both owned by big, massive corporations who were penny pinching, so they weren't using the best wood, so they were kind of cutting corners at the building the guitars. So like, by the time you get to the sort of 70s, there's quite a lot of the Japanese copies of Gibsons and Fenders were actually kind of better than the actual Gibsons and Fenders that were there, and they were cheaper as well. So to combat this, they started suing them and stuff like that. It was alright when they were making cheap, crappy copies, but once they started making ones that were as good, something like that's not really very far off like a real Fender one from that era, 1974. They started lawsuits and stuff, and by that point the Japanese had kind of gone, why are we copying current model guitars? Why don't we copy the 50s ones, 60s ones, which everyone wants? So that's kind of what there's like the Tokai breezy sound in the sort of higher end. That's actually quite a high end one, but you got different specs of the Japanese copies. You got ones with cheaper pickups, and you got ones that were more expensive, but that's your Tokai breezy sound and such things like that. So Fender decided they had to try and compete in the lower price market. So they went to, I think it was Korea, with this idea to start up making their own import guitars sort of thing. But this was maybe just a little bit after. So the first thing was, actually we'll just get Fujijin, who made like the Tokais and stuff. They're really keen on making an actual Fender guitar, because Fender guitars are really doing well in Japan. People are really wanting the old Fenders. So they made the JV series, which were basically a sort of a 57 and a 62 Stratocaster that they copied. They didn't copy the 70s ones or the current model of Fender Stratocaster. They copied the really old one. That was the first ever vintage reissue guitars. They were actually Fender, but they said in the top where it sometimes says original contour body, it said Squier series. They were Japan only, and then they sort of moved on a little bit. They were a bit popular and a bit good. People were loving them, and they ended up sort of sneaking out to Europe. By that point, they were Squier by Fender written in here. They just kind of, but again, and the top of there was 3 tiers. The top of the range ones actually had proper Fender pickups in it, but in this deal thing, Fender Japan, well, the company got started up during that with the Fujijin factory, who make, you can't really see the Fujijin telly, they're still Fujijin, same factory as that, who were making these guitars, to be honest, as well, but they didn't know, they were copying them. They didn't have the exact expertise on how to make them the way the original Fenders were made, like just the processes involved and how you make them. They didn't really do one-piece necks and stuff like that, but with Fender Japan, Fender told them how to do it, and then they were just making Fender Japans. And then these guitars were coming out sick. I've got if you read the Squier book, the American company were in tears because they were getting these guitars from Japan. I don't know, $300 sale price, and they were a Fender 600, and they were like looking at it, and they just couldn't make them as good as that. So they had to completely retool. There was even a couple of years when I think it was 85 and 86. There weren't actually any all Fenders. There weren't any Fenders made in America or any Fender Electrics. They were all Japanese, but still officially Fender. So that's kind of where this comes in, sort of almost. So Fender were thinking this was good, but they were still coming in at they were more mid-priced rather than cheap-priced, so they wanted a cheaper guitar. So they went to Korea or India, I can't remember which one, check it out, to make a student budget GP guitar, and they got prototypes and they weren't acceptable. So for a year they made a guitar called the Fender Bullet in America. I think there's a couple of versions of it. Looks very much like this. It's got an aluminium scratch plate, and see this bit of the bridge where the saddles fit. It's actually part of the scratch plate, and they used old Mustang pickups. So the pickups, if you imagine like a normal single coil pickup, is it a Mustang or Geosonic pickup? Imagine a pickup like that, right? And then another one like that. That's basically what it is. It's two of these pickups in below this plastic cover. Yeah. So it is. They're humbuckers because they are reverse wound and different magnets on them, but it is basically 4 single coil strap pickups the Fender Bullet had. So they made the Bullet for a year in America, and then they moved to Japan, and then Fender Japan, and then they started up the actual Squier series rather than being just those JV ones, which were Squier Fender. They weren't actually Fender Japan. This is the first Fender Japan where they'd actually set up the company to make them guitar. So it's a weird one. So you've basically got a full-on Telecaster neck, like a top of the range one-piece maple Telecaster neck, and then you've got this body which is kind of neither. The reason I've got the Strat, the Tele, it's sort of, so it's a Tele neck. If you look at the difference in thickness, you know, the size, it's kind of weird looking. It's full scale. It is a full 25.5-inch scale, and it's a hard tail, but it's very, very thick and square. I suppose some of that would probably to make it cheaper. I don't see how making it squished that way would actually really make a guitar any cheaper. What I do think they were trying to do was make it so that it didn't interfere too much with the American Strat and Teles. So they wanted to make it very obvious that you couldn't afford a Telecaster or a Stratocaster, so you bought this. So regardless of really how good a guitar it was. So this is the Japanese one. So these pickups will not be old American Fender Geosonic pickups. It will just be ones to make. So they're doing the same thing that they were doing in America, but for America they were doing it because they were trying to use up old pickups. Yeah, so they just use normal single coils in this. There's a wee push button, which when it's out, it's a humbucker. When it's in, it's basically a Geosonic. It's kind of a Geosonic. It's another shape though. It's another Fender shape. This is an original shape. Maybe it's for smaller people though. I mean, I think see as a student guitar, it's absolutely fantastic. It's proper full size scale and stuff like that, but the body's a little bit smaller for, I suppose, if you're a kid or something like that, or a skinny person. It kind of makes me look bigger than I am. But having humbuckers and single coils, and I've just a very simple wrap over bridge. Well, it's not a wrap over. It's got like it's like keyholes you put the string into. So it's not top sprung and it's not through strung. Yeah. So these are and then after this. The Japanese ones, they made Korean ones, which apparently aren't meant to be as good. They made these for a year or two, something like that. There's different versions of the Japanese ones. I don't really know about the other ones. There's definitely a sort of Telecaster bodied one, but it's a sort of elongated Telecaster like this. And then there's one that's got 3 single coils in it that's the same as this. There might even be one that's got a Strat trem in it. But they're all kind of weird looking. It's sort of like as soon as I played this, it's sort of like a 50s guitar, but just one they never made. You know, like your Fender, the Squier, I always talk about them because I like them. I like the concept, the pawn shop series where the Squier kind of make guitars that Fender could have made in the 60s but didn't, but it's kind of what this is. I do like the novelty of having the 2 sets of humbuckers. Basically, I do like a Geosonic. They didn't use the Geosonic shape, though. This is a new shape. You know, you'd wonder why don't you just use the Mustang shape, which they kind of have with the Bullet Mustang now. But I mean, this has got Goto Fender Japan tuners on it. It's got a skunk stripe. It's got a 7.25 inch radius. The neck on it's just a really, really, really good Fender neck. I suppose technically it is actually a Fender neck. I've got a Photo Flame Series 94 Japanese Fender, and it's, to be honest, it's the same, that you can kind of feel it been made by the same people that made these. The guitars that were better than what Fender were doing at the time. But they never really took off. I think it's purely just down to the shape. The way they've been kind of intentionally made to look cheap. I suppose it's a bit cheaper not having, having everything scratch plate mounted, including the output socket. That's a cheaper way of doing it, because it means you can build the scratch plates completely out of anywhere, and all you've got to do is put the scratch plate in and connect one earth wire from the bridge. That's it. So you can, the actual process of building them's easier. Notice it's also got a vintage correct thing. So it's like a vintage correct Fender model by Fender Japan for a guitar that wasn't made in the 60s but could have been, is kind of what it is, as maybe a beginner guitar. I'm playing through my wee Laney. I was messing about with it earlier on. Everyone else gets, sometimes just your ears kind of go funny. I think I was sounding dead muffled, and then I plugged this amp and I thought it was broken. I was like, oh no, it sounded awful, and then I don't know, it just seems to sound okay now though. So this guitar was a bit of a revelation for me. I bought it because it was a good price and it just said the pickup switch didn't work. So I thought, I'm sure it's worth more than that. But as soon as I played, put a hand in the neck, it's like, oh god, no, I'm keeping it. Exact same thing happened with it. Exact same thing happened with that, because it's all the same neck. Same as an Ibanez Roadster. I was talking to Mr. Whitesnake about this last night. He's trying to find a Fender that's as good as his Roadster, and it's like, it is the Roadster, same factory, just made a couple of years before it. So they'd made this, and then they were like going, that's quite a good way of making necks. We'll borrow that. But this is the first guitar when I got it that had the single coily thing for me, because unlike most of the other guitars I've got, the humbucker's split to single coils, so it sounds best as it's a humbucker, a proper 100% humbucker, and then you split it, and it's kind of like a single coil, whereas this is the other way around. It is a single coil, and then when you put two of them together, it's kind of like a humbucker, but it's 99% humbucker, but not quite. Just so this is better at single coil sounds than it is at humbucker sounds. Whereas if you did it the other way around, it'd be better at humbucker. But it really got me into playing clean. It was this very guitar because of the 7.25 inch radius, which feels like you're playing a broom handle the first time you pick it up. And then from then on, I think I worked out that I've got 4 other 7.25 inch radius that I never noticed because I already had one. It was once you get the first time you play it, it's like, whoa, mental. But I remember taking this into the studio with Krakenhouse and playing it, and it made me play differently. I was doing all these sort of Fendery, cleany. Well, I wasn't playing it clean, but it was getting clean sounds. So that's both pickups. That's with the tone off. Yeah, maybe that was what was wrong earlier on. So this is my Laney AC VC15, which I think it's noisy. I think it's that valve. I think I need to change the valve, whatever the clean stage valve is or something like that. It's definitely, I was thinking I would just sell it, but it does have something. I'm just running it through its wee 10-inch speaker as well, which is a wee bit different. So that's both pickups on. Neck. Neck is a humbucker. Bridge. And that's a brand new switch that I put in this. They still make the exact same switches they put in. It was a DM50 or something that says on the side of it. Exact same switch. Shite. I'm going to buy one of those ones with the circuit board on it. One of the cheap crappy ones with the circuit board. The ones that work these wee stupid ones with the wee leafy things, they're just crap. They don't work. This one's I even bought a brand new made in Japan. It cost like 25 quid. But it's still noisy, and it's not the original one. Bridge, single coil, and then humbucker. The lead channel's not as noisy. So you get a bridge humbucker. Single coil. There's something going on funny with my ears just now. Because the thing was, I was thinking it sounded dead dull, and it's like, I think I've got blockages in my ears or something like that. See, what the hell's going on? Like there's something, or my ears are blocked. I do actually have ear spray stuff to try and, because I thought my ears were going funny. But where's the guitar going? I guess I get the impression there's something in the effects pedal tune not working somewhere. I think these these were used in, dished out in schools at one point. I have had folk comment on it. It's like they've never seen one that doesn't have like folks' initials scored into them because they were pure beat up. They weren't cheap and they weren't expensive. But it's just that whole Japanese guitar thing, early 80s. It totally fits perfectly. Oh, incidentally, this is serial number 16. SQ was the new. So SQ00016. So I don't know how sequential they were. This is the first ever Squier model of guitar. The only Squiers that were before this, as I said, were those the Fender Squier series JV ones, and then the Squier. This was all on like 1 year. The ones that came to Britain were like Squier by Fender. Those were the first Squiers, but they were reissues of old Fenders. Whereas this is actually the first Squier, as in it's its own thing. It's not a reissue of anything. It's a new guitar. Even if you'd argue it was the new Strat, those were specifically made to be like old guitars. Was the first one. So the 16th ever original Squier. It's the best Squier I've ever played by miles. I mean, let's not piss about here. This is Fender Japan. It's not, and it's not really scrimped upon anywhere apart from this intentionally giving it a weird shape so it's not a real Fender. Do you know what I mean? But I like some of the concepts. I love the push buttons. I love the fact it's got these two single coil pickups. I love the way this pickup sound, and you know the way they technically work. But also like the idea of the saving money by using, like, not that doesn't work for this exact one, but the one that this is the one the year before, the one that was made in America, they were literally just trying to get rid of pickups. It's like, oh shit, we've got hundreds of single coil pickups from the Duosonics. Nobody's buying Duosonics. Well, what can we do with them? It's like, let's just mould plastic covers that we can fit two in. I like that. I like that concept. But like I said, that's not really what's happened here. It's like no matter what you think about it, I just wish it wasn't. I just wish it was a wee bit bigger that way. But I mean, it's what it makes it what it is. It's why it wasn't thousands of pounds. And it's in really, really nice condition. Not mint, but the neck is kind of, which is what's important about it, I suppose. The scratch plate's actually, it's been cracked and I super glued it, so it's not mint. Unfortunately, I do kind of like this for its collectorability. It's just that the actual guitar itself fits exactly, and if this would just been an Ibanez or a Tempest or a CSL or something, I would still totally dig it. The fact that this is actually the Fender one. You just imagine the problems that Fender had at that time, sitting there going, right, okay, we'll do this deal, we'll let Fender Japan make these reissue guitars, and those are the ones that are in the Squier book, and it's like they're just the factory was in tears when they saw them. Or just like, or was it a Tokai Breezy sound as well? It's like, we can't build guitars as good as this. You know what I mean? How are they doing this? Just by there's something funny electrically going on. I put it in humbucker mode. No, there's some. Maybe a case of plugging everything, unplugging everything, and squishing it all with contact cleaner. At last got more. This time it's Rapid electrical contact cleaner. I ran out. I've been enjoying that El Cambo pedal. I do quite like the ability to mess about. It was a guitar I was messing about with that did this as well, where you've got like you can have humbucker and single coil, or humbucker and single coil. I kind of like my Schecter does that, and it's like I do kind of miss that sometimes, rather than just having, you know, well, the Corker doesn't do it actually. The Corker, that's exactly, the Corker's a guitar that doesn't do it. And I'm not so sure about the wee Delamo rat pedal, how ratty it indeed actually is. I've been really liking is the Rusty Fuzz, which actually doesn't sound that different to that rat pedal. It's got a real crunch to it. I think my favourite thing about this, well, it does have a sort of different sound. It's got its own sound. Not all guitars have their own sound. This one kind of does. You can kind of, no matter what distortion you put on or what it is you play, you can kind of hear it's this guitar. Because it's not a Strat, because it doesn't have that vagueness that comes from having the springs in it, and it's not a Tele because the pickups are too strong. Dirty channel. There's definitely something going on with my ears or the amps or something. Actually, when I got this, all I could think of playing on it was Lynyrd Skynyrd for some reason. I felt very much like a Lynyrd Skynyrd-y sounding guitar. And it still makes me think it sounds very Lynyrd Skynyrd-y. The choice with this is I kind of always feel that maybe worth a lot of money. I mean, I keep meaning to put. I should put a reverb ad up because I mean it's a historical piece, especially being number 16. There's only 15 older Squiers in the world, and how many Squiers are there? There must be billions of Squiers, but only 15 older than this one. It's an amazing wee thing. And it's not wee though, it's just slightly... It's quite heavy as well, but it feels so weird not having any sort of contour. I mean, even a Telecaster, I was looking at that thinking, oh my god, there's no contours in that. I mean, or it might just be the shape that makes it look that way. Kind of stumpy. I don't know. I still think I suppose it's kind of like a modern version of the Duosonic. It's like an updated Duosonic. The thing is, I like the Duosonic. I didn't like the... I'm not so keen on the shorter scale length, although it's because it's only 24 inch. It's not too bad actually. It's just a wee bit shorter, but I'd rather have the full scale. It does kind of make the neck look thick though, because the body's thin. There's something out of proportion with this guitar. The Telecaster one I think is even more odd looking. This is just slightly odd. I'll tell you, it doesn't look as odd as the one with 3 Strat pickups in it, because this one, because it doesn't have the 3 pickups in it, it's not, or a trem, it's not pure Strat, whereas the one with the 3 pickups in it, it looks, you're so used to seeing a Strat scratch plate, and it's like, it's too squished, and kind of not unlike the Fender lead either, is it? Sort of. I mean, was that before this? The Fender lead was about 1980, maybe it was a couple of years before this, when they were trying to make a budget guitar, but again, they don't want to damage the sales of the big, the expensive Strats and Tellies, so they've got to try and make something that isn't a Strat or a Telly, rather than just making a cheaper Telly. So they made like these the lead ones, which are they're kind of not far off it. don't know. It's weird how some guitar shapes stuck and some didn't. This could have been. So it's actually not unlike the wee Roadster. Just that whole, just it could just do with a heavy amount of contouring on it. But beautiful guitar. If you ever see one, the thing is, it's one of those ones that a lot of people will probably did what I did. Someone's going, oh, how is that a square? I think that's a bit interesting. I'll have a wee shot of that, and they'll just go, oh my god, what? You know, because it's just got one of those necks. As soon as you touch it, you just go, fucking, it's just as good as necks get, really. It's exactly the same as what happened with these two. Although, to be honest, I was half expecting it with that one, but it was still surprising. You still go, all right, okay. And it's like, I know it's like, oh, blah 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 blah, made in Japan and all that, and being snobbery and stuff like that. But it's so picking up these guitars, it's like immediately you go, oh, right, that's a Japanese guitar. There's no other way around it. It doesn't necessarily always work that way if they're dirty and the strings are missing them and all that. But once they're playing, you just know. And it's got oldness. I mean, it doesn't matter how much you go into play, the guitars and the guitar stock, but even the ones that are been relic to make them look old and stuff. That you can't fake old. You can't aid a 40-year-old fingerboard or whatever it is. It just has a feel that you can't get. Nice, lovely, glossy neck as well. Rock on. Oh, I'm going to do a what's in the bag. I'm going to do next week's a themed week, and also next week I could be well, I will. I'm going to upgrade the audio in here a bit to see if I can get it a bit more better sounding. I'm aware one of my pals said this ages ago, and I wasn't ready to do it, but he said he's got like one of your pseudo surround sound systems. I've got one there, which I'm pointing at it because that's one of the things I'm going to set up. But it meant that basically whenever he was watching me, it was just dead mono, which meant it pure was dead flat. Whereas if you've got any sort of stereo, any sort of processing thing going on, and I'm feeding it even just something slightly different, it'll make things sound better. And I've been miking stuff up, I suppose. I'm not just using that snowball mic, which I bought purely on because it looked a bit like the spaceship in 2001. Hey Dave, what are you doing, Dave? So that should be fun. Rock on, and I'll see you. I will be live streaming tomorrow night, and I will announce what my special week will be. You will know what the special theme week. I think I've got enough to get almost every day. Maybe. Rock on.